Just property management, just what you need. Just property management, just what you need.
Hi and welcome to today's training on conflict resolution. At Just Property Management, we pride ourselves on our ability to manage conflict. At times, it is very common in our industry to be faced with tenants and owners that are experiencing a crisis. We've all had a day or two in our lives that we would much rather forget. We probably can remember that on that day there were people that made our day worse, or others that were able to really listen and understand us, even if we may have been initially really unpleasant. At Just Property Management, we want to do the best on every interaction with owners and tenants. Our mission statement is to have the best property management company in Australia by providing the best, prompt, professional service to both landlords and tenants, excelling with communication. Communication during conflict or crisis can make the difference between the situation escalating or de-escalating. We understand that if we have a great environment for our staff to work in, the positivity that the staff feel is passed on to our owners and tenants. We believe that in order to lift a person up who is experiencing a difficult day, we ourselves need to be on higher ground. When engaging with a client who is in the heat of a crisis, you will never successfully deal with them by counter-attack or getting involved in verbal banter. Counter-attack only adds fuel to the fire and rarely accomplishes anything with an angry person. Studies have proven that when a person is angry, they actually lose a huge amount of cognitive ability or functioning. This applies to us too. So in short, when we are angry, we can do or say things that are really stupid. A wiser approach is to help the person to feel understood and encourage him or her to calm down and discuss the situation reasonably. A caution, however, is that it would be most unwise to admonish the person in the middle of an attack to calm down and discuss the situation reasonably. Instead, use the following steps. Actively listen to the person and their concern. Don't interrupt or try to make your point. Instead, listen attentively using head nods or short verbal statements like "uh-huh" or "I see" to encourage the person to continue talking. Keep asking for elaboration and clarification whilst maintaining active listening. As you do this and remain calm, the angry person will be inclined to match your approach and calm themselves. Studies have found that during a crisis, the most powerful communication tools for the means of good and bad are as follows. Number 1, facial expressions. Being calm. Making sure we're in control of our emotions prior to coming out to the reception to greet the angry client. We really need to make a quick assessment on our current state. You may need to take some deep breaths. Think of your upcoming holiday or another special event that previously occurred. Consequently, this will affect our facial expression and tone of voice. This is very difficult to mask. I would say that facial expression is one aspect of our overall body language. Please consider the following aspects of body language that could impact this conflict. Eye contact, body language, personal space, height difference, gender difference, cultural differences. Least important on the graph are the words we use, and this is more than likely because the person who is in the crisis has reduced cognitive ability but is more emotive and will be reading our facial expression and tone. So if you are to encounter a crisis situation or conflict in your workplace, try these steps. Utilise active listening. Active listening is a communication technique. Active listening requires the listener to understand, interpret and evaluate what they hear. The ability to listen actively can improve personal relationships through reducing conflicts, strengthening cooperation and fostering understanding. Active listening identifies and validates feelings, reduces defensiveness, promotes change, communicates that we care and understand, will assist you assisting the client to regulate their emotions or behaviour, assist the client to talk it out, rather than act it out in verbal or physical aggression. You could consider taking notes. In some cases, this can be helpful. If you say something like, "I want to be sure that I'm understanding your main points. So would you mind if I take a few notes while you tell me about it?" This sometimes has a way of slowing what the person is saying, and it may tend to cause him or her to be less raging. However, the note-taking strategy must be used with caution, because at times it could make the person even angrier, especially if they're tending towards suspiciousness and paranoia about your motives. Number 4, show concern on your face, or that you do care. Your facial expression should be attentive and concerned. Indicate your interest in what the person is saying by maintaining a pleasant, relaxed facial expression and a steady, not staring gaze. Number 5, keep your voice tone soft. Never raise your voice so that you can be heard over a person who is yelling. This will only escalate the situation. Instead, lower your voice tone, even below your normal range. The natural effect of this is that the other person will also speak more softly. Number 6, paraphrase and summarise what the person has said. In an attempt to show to the person that you are really listening and want to understand, you might say something like, "Let me see if I have the main points that are important to you." Then proceed to summarise those in your own words. Number 7, never argue with a client. An argument generally occurs when you listen to what the person is saying with the intent of finding fault. You then begin to rebut their statements, often interrupting to do so. This will more than likely escalate the conflict and will often result in no result. Number 8, find as much as you possibly can to agree with. If you look closely enough, you can usually find something to agree with in what the person is saying. "Yes, Mrs. Smith, I can see that your monthly statement looks difficult to read, and I'm sure other owners would feel the same way." There is usually some grain of truth to their observations, even if they have misinterpreted some or part of the situation. If you can find something to agree with them on, acknowledge this. This will provide validation to the client, acknowledging your ability to see how it could have been interpreted as they are seeing it. Number 9, empathise with the person's feelings. You might say something like, "I can see how you'd be really frustrated. In situations where I felt I was cut off and my opinions didn't matter, I felt frustrated too." Number 10, once you've done this, you could go on and calmly ask if the client would be willing to hear some additional information. This is where you begin to share your side of the story. You're not saying that yours is the right information and theirs is wrong. You're saying something like, "Would it be all right if I shared with you some other facts or information that may just give us the total picture?" Proceed then to convey that information calmly, being sure as not to rub it in the client's face if the facts are blatantly obvious and the owner is clearly in the wrong. If the owner was to accept the mistake, we could emphasise and show that we understand that mistakes are made and that there are no hard feelings from the company side. Number 11, ask what the client thinks would make the situation better. Very often the person is so consumed with the expression of anger, he or she has not really paused to think about what can be done now to improve the situation. Openly asking the individual for suggestions for improvement can begin to move the situation toward a problem-solving mode. This question would only be asked when the client is starting to de-escalate. If we engage with the client in problem solving, we would need to be honest with ourselves and willing to take on board the suggestions and follow through. Number 12, add your suggestions and ask the client what they think. If the person fails to offer constructive suggestions but insists on continuing the attack, you may want to suggest something that could make the situation better. Apologise and make an offer for resolution. Number 13, suggest a thinking break. If the client has reached the point of no return and becomes verbally and even appears that they may become physically aggressive, then never touch an angry and potentially violent person. Avoid any aggressive moves and provocative statements. Avoid being emotionally or verbally involved in the conflict and counter-aggression. Remove others who might trigger the violence. Body language is critical. Withdraw yourself safely from the situation. Do not threaten that you will be phoning the police. I'm sorry, sir, but I have to leave. Someone else in the office should at this stage phone the police. There may be times when you need to schedule another time to talk. If it's apparent that continuing the discussion at this time is leading nowhere fast, a cool off, a thinking break could be the last resort. You might suggest, why don't we both give this some thought and get back together tomorrow, maybe around 2 o'clock, and see if we can work this out. Does that time work for you? Number 14, make an action plan. Restate it for clarity. If you've been able to agree on some action steps, be sure that both restate those steps to ensure that you understand your agreement the same way. In summary, please consider these key points. When people become angry, they can behave irrationally. Active listening can de-escalate a situation. Facial expressions and body language is the most important, followed by tone of voice, then the words or message we are trying to convey during a crisis. Treat the person with respect and dignity, even if you may feel they do not deserve it. Conflict resolution is highly challenging, even for professionals who work in prisons, youth accommodation, or the protective services. Professionals are often drawn into the banter. If we are really honest with ourselves and our clients and respond with respect, active listening and understanding, a solution will be found.
Just property management, just what you need.